Hey guys, Carl from Purple Moose Plays. Today I'm taking a look at Cosmic Colonies from Floodgate Games, designed by Scott Almes. This is a simultaneous action selection polyomino tile laying game that features a unique twist on a card drafting mechanism. As normal, I'll meet you down at the table to show you how this game plays both multiplayer and solo player. I'll walk you through a full solo playthrough of the game, and then we'll come back up here to let you know what I think about the game. I'll see you soon. To set up a game of Cosmic Colonies, begin by placing the main board in the center of the table. This main board will be adjusted based on the number of players, as written in the top right corner here. So one side of the board is for 2 to 3 players, and the other side of the board is for 4 or 5 players. The differences between the two sides of the board are the maximum number of resources that can be stored in each space, as well as the number of each individual building. On the back, for the larger player game, the resources can hold up to 7 resources instead of 5, and there are 2 of each building shape on the board. You'll also notice that the cost of the second building is more expensive in the 4 and 5 player game. But I will be showing you a solo game which is going to be following the rules of the 2 player game for the most part. So we're going to use the 2 or 3 side of the board. So you see here I've already got all of my resources and all of my building pieces out on the table to be ready to use for the game. In addition, you're going to fill in every spot on the board with one of the appropriate building. And then finally, you're going to place one of each resource per player into the resource boxes at the bottom of the board. In this case, we will be playing a solo game. I'm going to teach you the regular rules before teaching you the solo changes. But a solo game is going to be set up like a 2-player game. So we're going to set up everything here as if we were playing 2 players. That means we will put 2 of the mineral resources, 2 of the water resources, 2 of the biological plant-based resources, and 2 of the power resources. All right, then each player is going to be given a player board. The player boards look like this. These are 2 double-sided boards. And the difference is we've got here with a single gear marking the standard side of the board, and here with the triple gear marking the more advanced side of the board. I will explain both of those, but for the solo game we're going to be using the standard side of the board. So I'm going to be placing it face down like this. The only difference that you're going to see is going to be endgame scoring, which I'll talk about when we get there. You'll see this sun and moon on the card slots. Again, I'll explain that when I talk about how the game is played. And the layout of the board is a little bit different. Otherwise, the game is going to play largely the same way. So I'll explain those changes when we get there. One more thing on the main board I forgot. You're going to put a round tracker on round number 1. In this case, I'm using the deluxe copy of the game. So it comes with this really cool spaceship round tracker. So that will go on round track 1. In addition, up here off camera, we've got our scorecard. Every player is going to place their piece. Again, these are the deluxe components. They would just be cardboard tokens in the regular version of the game on the 0 track. Now, if you were playing a standard 2-player game, you're actually going to use the back of this card. So you won't be using this scoring track until the very end of the game because you will need to use this side. However, in the solo mode, you will see we don't use this side. So I'm going to start off on this side, and this will just be off the screen until we need to do scoring at the end of the game. All right, once you've got your player board, every player also receives 1 resource of each type to start the game. So I've got 1 mineral, 1 water, 1 organics, and 1 power to start the game. And then finally, the last step for setting up the regular game, 2 more steps for setting up the game. First, every player is going to get a special secret goal card that's going to affect the endgame scoring. It's basically giving you 1 major and 1 minor building shape that you're going to be focusing on for extra scoring in the game. This will come up again when I explain scoring, but I just wanted to show you what these cards are right now. So you're going to shuffle these up, and every player will receive 1 of these as a secret. I'll show you what mine is later when we begin playing the game. So now, in addition to choosing the standard side or the advanced side of the player board, the cards that you use for the game are actually going to be different as well. So again, when you choose the cards, if you look at the back of the card, if you see a single gear, that's the standard cards. And if you see this triple gear, those are the advanced cards. And again, I will explain what those do when we get to the spot about where I'm explaining how the rules work. But for right now, understand that in the multiplayer game, there are 20 cards, all unique cards, in both the standard and advanced set of cards. So to start the game, to set up the game, you're only going to be using 4 cards per player, plus an additional 4 cards in the 2-player game, which means in a 5-player game, you'll use all 20 cards. In a 4-player game, you'll use 16 cards. In a 3-player game, you'll use 12 cards. And in a 2-player game, you would be using 8 cards, but again, you need the additional 12. The additional 4. So you'll also be using 12 cards in the 2-player game. In this case, we're not going to be playing the multiplayer game, so we're going to actually use different cards. But let me just show you that, right? So you're going to choose, if you'd like to, and recommend it early in your first few plays to do it randomly. Shuffle these cards up, take out the correct total number of cards you need for your play. Again, 4 cards per player, plus 4 for the 2-player game. And then you're going to deal 4 cards to each player. In the case of the 2-player game, on the back of this mat, you're going to put 2 cards on this side and 2 cards on this side. And that's where those extra 4 cards that you would have drawn in the 2-player game will be going. Otherwise, every player gets 4 cards and the game begins. Now, in the case of the solo game, things are going to be done a little bit differently. And the way the game plays is the same. So I'm going to finish setting up the solo game, and then I will explain the rules and talk about how the solo game changes those rules. So in the case of the solo game, the AI player is actually going to get its own board that looks like this. So we're going to put this on the table next to my own board. And we're going to choose a difficulty level for the AI. And you can see here in the corner we've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those are the number of points that the AI player is going to score per building in its player board. So at the beginning of the game, we get to choose which level we want to be playing at. 7 is sort of the standard mode. If you want to go a little bit easier, you can go down to 5. Or if you'd like to go harder, you can go all the way up to 10. As I said, step 7 is standard, so we're going to start right there at 7. We'll see how I do. I might get lucky, I might get destroyed, but we'll see. In addition, the AI does not get one of these personal goal cards. Also, in the solo version of the game, you're going to be using a special set of cards that have a picture of the AI logo on the back. There are only 14 cards in this case, and you will be using all of these cards. And the reason you need to use these cards for the solo version is because down here at the bottom are some descriptions of what the AI player is going to do on their turn. So you cannot use the regular cards for the solo game. You will be using these special cards specifically designed for the solo game. Cosmic Colonies plays out over a series of 8 rounds, as you see up here by the round tracker at the top of the main board. At the end of every round, this spaceship figure is going to move up until we get to the 8th round, and when the 8th round is completed, then we will do our final scoring, and whoever has the highest score will be the winner of the game. In each round, the players will each get 2 turns, but the way that the turns work is semi-simultaneous and then semi-designed by initiative. So let's talk a little bit about how each turn works. On a turn, all players are going to choose 1 card from their hand of 4 cards to play in front of them. For example, a card might look like this. You're going to look at a few things. You're playing your cards face down, and when all players have their cards face down, you will reveal those cards. And this number in the top left corner is going to be your initiative number. The lower the number, the higher your initiative. It means the sooner you will go in that turn. So for example, if we were playing a 2-player game, and I had played this card, and my opponent had played this card, then I, with card number 1, will be going first, and my opponent, with the card number 19, will be going second. You then look at the bottom of the card. Each card is going to have a special ability, except for this card number 1 that specifically says no special ability. And you're going to be able to do whatever that card says at the bottom. If the card says before action, this will trigger before you take your action for that turn. And of course, if the card says after action, this will give you something that you can do after you've done your action for the turn. So after your card has determined initiative for that turn, players will take their turns in initiative order, again starting with the lowest number and moving to the highest number, selecting one of 2 actions on their turn. The first action that you can do on your turn is you can collect resources from this market on the main board. And the way that works is this. You first look at the card that you've played, and you look at the number right here in the bottom right corner. This number is going to be the number of resources that you can collect on your turn after having played that card. You're going to choose one of the different resource locations, and you're going to collect up to that number. If there are not enough resources to collect that number of resources, you will take all of the resources in that location. Otherwise, you will take that number of resources from the location that you've chosen. The other action that you can choose on your turn is to build a building into your colony. You're always going to have these buildings available in front of you. However, if someone with lower initiative, who's going first in the round, buys a building before you get to it, then you do not have the ability to build that building for this round. The buildings will be replaced at the end of every round, so you may be able to buy it in a subsequent round. But again, during a round, if a player buys a building, that building does not refill until the end of the round. So the way that you're going to buy these buildings or build these buildings is by using the resources that you've collected. Next to each building, it shows the cost of that building. So for example, this blue L shape requires 2 water and 1 power. This gives 2 power and 1 mineral. This will use 2 organics and 1 water. This will use 2 minerals and 1 organic. And this long piece in the middle will take 2 of any one resource and 1 of a second type of resource. So again, you can spend the resources from your own player board into the supply, and then you're going to take the building that you've purchased and put it on your colony, following the rules of placement. And the rules of placement are this. The first piece that you place in your colony may be placed anywhere on the board that you'd like. However, it must always fit within the grid, and it must never extend beyond the outside edge of your colony on your player board. So the first piece, for example, I could place like this, covering these 3 purple spaces and this 1 gray space. On a subsequent turn, when I buy another building, I must place that building such that at least one edge of this building is touching one edge of another building that I've previously built on my board. So I could place that building here, like this, or here, like this, but I could not place it over here, separate from any building that I already have, and I could also not place it so that they are only touching by corners. They must share an edge in order to place on your board. However, I mention all of these rules. Some of the cards that you will be playing during the game will break these rules, so these will not always be true. But the normal rules as written are such that you must place the piece so that it is touching the edge of another piece that you've previously placed on your board. So again, all players will take this first turn in initiative order, and then all players will play a second card face down, reveal their cards, and take a second turn in initiative order. If you are playing the advanced version of the game, the difference here is that the cards have 2 different things written on them. In this case, the top action or the top benefit will trigger the first card play. So you're going to play 2 cards in every round. The first turn will trigger the top ability, and the second turn would then trigger the bottom ability. So in the advanced version of the game, it's going to matter the order in which you play the cards that you're playing. However, in the standard version of the game, each card has only a single ability. So the order in which you play your cards is not going to matter, except that you might want to consider which abilities you're triggering at which point in your turn. After every player has played 2 cards, you're then going to take those 2 cards and pass them to your left to the player sitting next to you. So that means every round, the 2 cards that you're using are becoming the cards of your opponent to your left. So it's sort of working like a drafting game, only instead of taking cards and passing the cards you don't need, in this case, you're playing cards and then passing the cards that you have played. So every round you're losing 2 cards to your opponent on your left, and you're receiving 2 cards from the opponent on your right. In the 2-player game, to make it so that you're not just exchanging cards back and forth during this pass, you're going to use the board that I mentioned at the beginning of setup. So what you're going to do is at the end of the round, after you've played 2 cards, you're going to take the 2 cards that are here on your right side, and then you're going to place the 2 cards that you used here on the left side. So this is going to add 1 round in between the cards you used becoming the cards of your opponents. So you will take the cards and place them here, and then on the following round, your opponent will take those cards from here. So there's always 1 round space in between the cards you used becoming the cards of your opponents, whether you're playing 2-player, 3-player, or 4-player. That won't be true in the solo game, however. So let me explain how the solo game is going to work. In the solo game, we start with all 14 cards. And I'm going to deal myself 4 of those cards, and the rest of those cards will come over here as the AI's deck. So I'm going to have these 4 cards as my hand of cards, and just like the regular game, I will play 1 card. However, after I play my card, the AI is going to flip over the top card of their deck. Again, just like in the main game, we will compare initiatives. Whoever has the lower number will go first, followed by the second player. Then we will do the same thing again. I will play a second card. The AI will turn over the top card of their deck. Whoever has the lower number will go first, the higher number will go second. And then what happens is this. The 2 cards that I played will get played over here into the discard pile for the AI. And the 2 cards that the AI has played will come over into my hand. So now I've got 4 cards, including the 2 cards the AI just played. And my cards have become a discard over here. When the AI's deck is completely run out and it's time to draw new cards for the AI, we will shuffle the discard pile and turn those over to become the new AI deck that the AI will play from. So again, the game plays out in this way over 8 rounds, and at the end of the 8th round we will score, and whoever has the highest points will win. But the AI is actually going to play a little bit differently than a regular player. Obviously, it's not a regular player. It cannot make decisions like a regular player. So what's going to happen is this. I mentioned before that in the solo version of the game, the AI is going to be using special cards, or we're both going to be using these special cards designed for the AI, or solo version of the game. So if we look at those cards, at the bottom we see first and second. So when we flip over a card from the AI's deck and put it into play, when it's the AI's turn, they're going to look here as first priority, and if they cannot do this, at least in a small amount, they will do the second activity. And if they can't do the second action, they will not do anything during that turn. So in the case of a building, the AI is going to attempt to spend the resources to build the building shown in the first spot. And if they can't build that building, they will do what they can to build the building in the second spot. And if they don't have the resources to build either, they won't do anything. Other cards will show like this, where it shows resources. This means the AI will attempt to receive 3 resources from the market. In this case, 3 organic resources. If they cannot take any organic resources, so this means right now, if they played this 3 organic resource card, they would take these 2 resources and put them into their supply. Even though they didn't take all 3, that is the end of their turn because they were able to take something. However, if there was nothing there and they couldn't take any of these organic resources, then they would instead look here and they would take power resources instead. So again, the AI is always going to refer to the bottom of their card, trying first to do this action, and then if they cannot, doing this action. The AI will never trigger what it says in the ability section. And the AI also doesn't care about this number here for how many resources it can take, because the resources are always taken based on what it says at the bottom of the card. So let's talk a little bit about end game scoring. What are we doing? Why are we doing things in this game? What is my goal? Well, we've got several goals. Of course, we're trying to build things in our player board. When we're placing these buildings, we're covering up these different colored areas on the map. We've got purple, gray, and blue spaces, as well as these empty spaces. In the standard game, the empty spaces don't mean anything, but we are trying to cover over the different terrain types on the board. And at the end of the game, we're going to score points for each type based on how many we can still see or how many are visible on our board that are not covered by buildings that we have placed. So for example, you can see here for the purple areas, if I have 5 or more of them showing at the end of the game, I get 0 points. But if I can get down to only one of them left on the board that isn't covered by a building, I'm going to score 12 points. So we're going to score each type of area based on how many are still visible at the end of the game. Again, for the empty spaces, they don't mean anything for the standard version of the game. But in the advanced version of the game, you're actually going to be getting 1 point per uncovered area. So you're trying to only cover the ones that have something printed on them and trying to leave the uncovered ones, the unprinted ones, the ones that have nothing in them, uncovered at the end to score 1 point per area. But again, in the standard mode, which we're playing in the solo version, and again, the solo version only plays in the standard mode, we don't have to worry about that. In addition to that, if we're able to build one of each type of building, we're going to score 15 points for each set of all 5 types. And finally, we have that personal goal card that's hidden throughout the game. For every shape that we see at the top of this card that we've managed to build in our player board, we're going to score an extra 2 points. And for every one of the buildings that's shown at the bottom of your card, you're going to score an additional 1 point. So again, we're playing out over 8 rounds. Each round, each player will get 2 turns. When all 8 rounds are completed, we will check scoring, and whoever has the highest score will win the game. There are 2 more small things that I've forgotten to mention, so I'll mention them right now. The AI player does in fact start with 2 of each resource, and it does have a maximum of 9 resources in its personal supply, just like we do as well. So if anything ever goes over 9 resources, the rest of the resources will be discarded back to the main supply. In addition, at the end of the game during scoring, the AI is going to score differently. The AI again is scoring based on the level that you chose, that chosen number of points per building that it has managed to build. But the AI will also lose 5 points for every building shape that it has not managed to build by the end of the game. The other thing that I forgot to mention is in between rounds, we are going to once again add 1 resource per player in each of the 4 different resource types, and we will fill in to make sure that all of the building types have been filled in between rounds. There will always be 1 of each building type available at the start of every round. So let me go ahead and shuffle up the cards and get everything reset, and we will get started with our solo playthrough. Alright, so here we are all set up for our solo playthrough. And again, I've kept that same goal card that I showed you earlier, which will be 2 points for any of these yellow sort of S-shaped pieces, and 1 point for any of the long purple type pieces. So I'll keep that here off to the side. And I've gone ahead and I've drawn 4 cards. So let me show you what I've got. I've got the 8 Hydra Engineer, will get me 4 resources, also, if I collect with him, if there's not enough water to collect all 4 waters that I need, I can instead take water from the AI's personal supply or the main supply instead. I've got a 4 that says before I take the action, if the AI has more power than I do, I can take 1 power from the AI. And this will also let me collect 3 of any resource. The crew leader, number 9, says that if the AI's number is higher than this, I can do both collect and build actions, which would be very powerful. But if I collect with the crew leader, I can only collect 2 resources. And number 12, the logistics expert, says before I take an action, I can move any tile on my board, but it has to still touch another tile's edge. And I'm going to be able to collect 3 resources with this card. So let me think about this for a minute. Of course, I don't have enough resources yet to build anything. I would like to start focusing on these that I see down here. So let's see what I want to do first. All right, I'm going to think that I wouldn't mind any of these, really. He does have more power than me, so I could get that. There's only 2 water here, so I could take both of his water. And both of those things are not bad to do, because if he doesn't have enough resources to build something when it comes time to build something, that's helpful. Then he can't build. I could also try the collect and build action. It says if the number is higher than mine, well, the chances of it being higher than mine, he could have a 10, 11, 13, or 14. So there are 4 cards that are higher than this, but there's a lot of cards that are lower than this as well. So I don't know if I want to risk that right now, because it only lets me get 2 resources anyway. So I'm going to play this 8 card, which again is the one that lets me take water from him if I decide to collect water. So then we flip over his card and we'll see what he gets. He gets a 13. So I am going first. And as I said, I am going to collect water. So I'm going to take these 2, and I'm going to take the other 2 from his supply. And that's my turn. Now the AI says first it's going to try and collect 3 organic resources. There are 2 there, so it will take those 2. It doesn't need to take the 3rd, and because it took anything, that's the end of its turn. So now it's my turn again, or time to play a card again. In this case, I would really like to build something. Hold on, how many resources? I'm at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I could hold 1 more resource. So there's no reason not to take another power resource from him. This will let me go very early in the round, which means I can build something, hopefully, before he has a chance to steal it from me. So I'm going to go ahead and play this card. And he plays an 11, which is great. I do get to go first. So I can build whatever I want to, but the only resource I have 2 of is water. So the only things I can build right now are this blue L shape or this long one. That's 2 of anything and 1 of something else. And the long one is on my special gold, but remember, I do need 1 of each building in order to get those 15 points, and that's a huge number. So realistically, I do need to make sure that I get at least 1 of every building in order to do well. I forgot something though. My before action again said if the robot has more power than me, which it does, it has 2, I have 1. So I'm going to take 1 of its power as well. And now I'm taking my turn. I will go ahead and build this blue L shape. I'm looking at his card. If it showed me that he was going to build something, I would try and block him. But it looks like this round he's only going to collect resources, so there's no reason for me to specifically buy a building to block him. And I will build this. Now, this is where I always struggle a little bit with decisions. The blue ones are easier to cover because there's less of them, but they don't score as much. The purple ones, there's a lot of them on the board. So you really have to work to cover them, but if you can, they're worth a lot of points. So I'm going to put this down here in the corner, and hopefully that covers 3 purple and 1 gray, which is very good for me. And now he's going to try and collect minerals, which he can do. And those come to his board. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's safe. That's not too many resources. Sorry, I forgot to pay for my building. 2 water goes there. 1 power goes there. All right, so it's the end of the turn. My 2 cards will come over here into the discard pile for the AI. The AI's 2 cards now will be added to my hand. And then we're going to add 2 of each resource because me and the AI make 2 players. So that's 2 there, 2 there, 2 there, and 2 here. Remembering, of course, that on the board, the maximum in any one space is 5. So if we ever hit 5, we do not add any more to that area. And then we have to add 1 more building to the space where I bought it. And this will move forward to the next round. So let's take a look at my cards again and see what we want to do. I still have a whole lot of water. I also see here is a perfect S shape, so I wouldn't mind aiming for that. In which case I need to get more power. There's a lot of power there. So if I can get something that collects a lot, that wouldn't be a bad idea. I could try for this collect and build, but I have 11, 12, and 13, and I already just put 10 there. No, I didn't. That was 8. So there's a 10 and a 14 somewhere. But that's not a great possibility, and that's only going to get me 2 resources anyway. I'm going to go with this collector. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I do that, I'm going to get all 4 of these, which is a small problem because I don't have space for all 4 of them. So maybe I should build something first. No, because I want to put that piece there. Okay. Otherwise, I can do this one, which says before action, if I have more resources in my warehouse than the robot, I have to give them 2 of my resources. And right now I don't, so that would be safe for me to play. I collect a lot of resources, same way. But I don't really want to collect resources right now. I want to build. So I'm going to go with a low number. I'll go with this 9. And if I get lucky, that's great. And if I don't, then so be it. The AI flips. He got a 2. So his priority number is not higher than mine. So he's going to go first, and he's going to try and build this square building. Means he needs 2 minerals and an organic, which he has. So he will spend those resources, and he will buy this and place it here on his player board. So now my turn, I can either collect 2 of one resource or build something. In this case, oh, that was a mistake. I meant to collect more, but that's too bad. Okay, so I'm going to then collect 2 power or build something. I don't really want to... You know what? Why not? I'm going to build 1 more of the L shape. So 2 blue and a lightning will get me this. And again, it has to touch an edge. I like this. One of them is empty, which is too bad. But if I place this here, I'm covering up 1 of each area type. And that's not horrible. All right, that's fine. So now we're going to play again. Now I definitely need to collect. I'm going to use this collector bot. It forces me to choose the one that has the most, but the one that has the most right now is the one that I want, so that's fine. So I will play that, and we'll see what happens. The AI gets a 3. Anyway, so the AI is going first. They're trying to build this T shape, which needs 2 organic and a water, but they don't have any water, so they can't do that. And then they're going to try and build the L shape, which I've already built, so they can't build that either. So the AI does nothing this turn. And I am going to, well, I have to, because I use collector bot, I must collect from the resource with the most resources, which is this one. So I'll take all of these power, which is great for me. And that's the end of the round. So again, my cards go to his discard. And his cards become my cards. So now I've got some really nice low number cards. We fill in 2 of each resource. 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, 2 here. And we replace the buildings that have been built. So I'll put 1 there, 1 there, and this advances to round 3. All right, round 3. See, this is the card I was talking about before. This one will allow me to place a shape diagonally adjacent rather than touching an edge. So that breaks that placement rule that I was talking about. But in this case, I don't really want to do that. I do want to put that yellow piece right in here. I think is a great spot for me to put it. So let's look at doing that. What else we got? This one lets me build and use a mineral as any resource, but I only have 1 of them right now, so that's not super helpful. This is that one I showed before. And this one's going to let me move something. I don't really want to do that either. So I'm going to use this 3 just to make sure he doesn't steal the building that I want, which again is this S shape. I will gonna go early. I don't care about the placing diagonally this time, but let's see what happens. All right, he's got a 10, so I'm going first. I'm going to spend 2 power and a mineral to buy this. And now the question is, do I place it here, covering 2 gray, a purple, and a blue? Or do I place it here, covering 3 purple and a gray? Either way, I want to do both of them some point in this game. So I'm going to start with the one that potentially could score me more points. Let's put that there. All right, and his turn says he's trying to build the long one, which he can do. He's going to spend 2 of any resource and 1 of another resource. In this case, I'm trying to make it so that he doesn't have 2 of anything, because all of the buildings require him to have 2 of everything, or 2 of something to buy the building. So if I make him discard 2 of these organics and 1 of these minerals, I guarantee that if he tries to build on his next turn, he won't be able to do that. So he's going to take this long one and place that on his board. And now we move on to the next turn. So I want to get some resources. The most resources right now that I can get is 4. So I could do either. I don't want to use this because this will only get me 2 resources. So I could use either this 12 or this 13. The problem is right now I have more resources than the robot or the AI. So if I use this card, I'm going to have to give him 2 of my resources, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to play this 12. And the AI plays a 6. So he goes first. He's going to try and build this, but again, I took away his resources, so he cannot. So he's going instead to collect 2 of these minerals and 1 water and place them in his supply. And then my turn, I can either try and build, which right now I cannot build anything. Yes, I could build a straight one, but he already built it, so I can't. So I'm going to collect 3 of something. And I'm looking at my board. I want that S shape here, which means I could put a T shape here, and a square would fit very nicely there. So I'm going to try to aim for this one next round. No, I don't like that because there's only 2 of these and I could take 3. I'm going to aim for this one next round, so I'm going to take 3 of the organic resource. And that's the end of the 3rd round. My cards go into his discard, and his cards are now mine. We add resources. 2, 2, 2, and 2. We're now up to 5 water, so if nobody takes them, next round we won't add any more there. And then we replace the buildings, this one and this one. And now let me look at the 2 new cards that I got. All right, number 6 card is a 3 resource collector, and I'm allowed to pay double the cost if I take a piece. And instead of taking it from here, I can take it from his board, which is interesting, but that's really expensive and might hurt me further forward. So I'm gonna skip that one for a minute. This botanist piece I really, really like, or card, sorry, not piece, which says after my action, I can spend 2 organic to place one of these 2 square tiles. These 2 square tiles are never something we could buy normally unless you have a card. Same thing with the 1 square, but the 1 square never comes out in the solo game, only in the multiplayer game. So if I, after doing what I want to do, pay 2 more organics, I can build this small little piece as well. And that could be incredibly helpful in some way. So let's think about that. Yes, I'm going to play that card, and I'll show you why in a minute. So the AI is going to flip over their card. They got a 14, I got a 10. I go first. I am building as planned. 2 organic and a water gets me this T piece, which will go here. Because now I can very easily put that S in here. And then I am going to pay that extra 2 organic to buy that 2 piece, because now I'm going to place this here, which means on a future turn, if I buy one of those big L pieces, it will fit perfectly right there. So I am looking to do that some point in the future. All right, so now the AI takes his turn and he's collecting 3 power resources. All right, so what am I doing next? Clearly I need more resources, and I'm not sure yet what I want to get. I do want to build this, and eventually I need to build one of these, and then I want to start filling in shapes based on shapes. I do have 2 power though. So if I can get some of these minerals, I can easily put that S in there, and I am getting 2 points for each of those. So that's not a bad idea. And I do have less resources than the robot now. So if I use this 13 card now, it would be safe. So I'm going to do that in the hopes that I can get lots of resources. And he's going to flip over. Clearly he'll go before me because the 14 is already there. He's going before me and he's trying to build one of these long pieces, which takes 2 of one resource and 1 of another resource. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 2 mineral and 1 power, because if I use 2 mineral and 1 power, the only thing left that he can build is either another straight piece or this S piece in his next turn. And he did that to build this, which goes here. And now I take my turn. I'm allowed to take 5 resources, but I want to aim for, or do I? Is it worth having an extra water and putting that L piece here while I can? I think right now it might be, because if I'm using a 5 card, I might as well take all 5 resources, and then we'll get more water on the board as well. So let's do that. So that's the end of the round. This gets past here. Sorry, this was round 4. I'd forgotten to move that forward because I can see I built 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. So that was round 4. I'm sorry. So my cards go here. These come back to me. We refill resources. This has 4, so it's only getting 1. 2 more water. 2 more organics, which is now at 5. And 2 more power. We replace this one. We replace this one. And the round, I don't forget this time, goes to round 5. All right, so let's take a look at the cards. We still have the one I can pay double to build from the robots board. I still have the card that I can spend a mineral as any resource. Now I have the number 1 card, which just lets me go early. It collects very little and it has no special ability, but that might not be bad for building with. And the gravity core driller lets me take 5, but it lets me choose from 2 different locations, which is great. But right now, if I take 5 resources, I can't put them in my warehouse. There's not enough space. So I'm going to use this one to make sure I go first so I can build what I want to build. The AI turns his over. He's got a 5. So I go first. I'm spending 2 water and a power to take this and place it up here in the corner. All right, and then he goes. The AI is trying to build this S piece with 2 lightning and a purple, which he can do, which is not great because he hasn't built one of those yet, and that's his 3rd building type. Remember, he gets -5 for every building he cannot build. So I want to try my hardest to make sure he never has 2 organics or 2 water, if I can stop that. All right, so that's that. So now we're going to go again. Again, I still need to make sure for my 15 points that I build one of these and I build one of these. So I do need to focus on that. And I am going to play that card that lets me have 5 resources from 2 locations. It means I'm going second, which is fine. But let's see what he does. He plays the 7. He's going to try and build this piece, but it can't be built because I already did. So he's going to then try and collect 2 water and an organic, which he can do. And then I'm collecting 5 resources, and I can choose from 2 different locations. Looking at this, I want 2 purple and a green, or 2 minerals and an organic. So I definitely want to take that. There's 3. So I'm taking from those 2 spaces. And now I can choose anything else. Remember, I do have that card that lets me spend a mineral as any resource. So I definitely want at least one more of those. Yeah, I'll take 2 of those. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and perfect. And that's the end of the round. I pass my cards to him, and those 2 become mine. We fill in resources, 2 mineral, 2 water, 1, 2, 3, 2 organic, and 2 power. This moves up 1, so I don't forget, and we refill shapes like this. All right, round 6. I got 2 new cards, and these are the last 2 cards that I haven't shown yet. Card number 7 is a 3 collection, and also before I take my action, I can exchange 2 of my resources for 2 other resources of the same type, meaning both resources are the same, from either the general supply or from his supply. So that actually wouldn't be a bad idea. If I want to keep him from building blues and greens, I could steal 2 blues from him. If I steal 2 water, he can't build this, and he would still have enough to build that one, however. But that might not be a bad option. I'm looking to build these 2 things. I have enough resources to do it. The other card that I got new is this number 5 card. It collects 3, and it lets me build so that the piece that I'm placing extends outside of the edges of my player board. Again, which was a rule I said you couldn't do, but with this card you can. Again, I still though think I'm going to play this 7. And he's going to now have to shuffle and start over because he has no cards left. And he gets a 12. So I'm going first. And I can convert 2 of something for 2 of something else. And I don't need to have more than 2 of these purple ones. Let's see this though. No, I do need those. And I don't want to give him more water. Or do I? If I give him lots of water and take those 2 green away, he could build the L, but he can't build that T shape anymore. Yeah. If I give him water, I'm not giving him anything new that's going to help him. And I'm going to take these 2 organics away. So he can't for sure build this T shape. And then I'm spending 2 of these and 1 green to build this right here. And then his turn, he's going to try and collect water. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's got a whole lot of water. All right, my next turn, I do probably want to try and build again. But the question is, what do I want to build? I'm still missing that straight piece, so I think I should probably do that. Yeah, let's do that. All right, because we have enough to do that with 2 greens and a blue. I want to stick away from these yellows and purples because I do want to put this here on a later round. So I want to build this turn. I don't need it to cross outside. I'm not going to pay double cost, although I could. Because this is 2 of anything and 1 of something else. I could use all 6 of these resources to steal one of his long pieces, which would be good for me and take points of 7 points away from him. Yeah, I'm going to do that actually. All right, so he's got a 9, so I'm going first. And again, I'm spending 2 green and a blue to pay for this once. And I'm spending 2 purple and a yellow to pay for it a second time, because now I can take this tile from him instead of from that board. And I will place it here, which covers 3 of those purple and 1 gray, which is pretty good. This is going to be a problem, but so be it. I'm never going to cover everything in the game. So that's my turn, and he's going to try and build the square, which I've already built, so he can't. So instead he will take 2 power and a mineral, but he's at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So he's only going to take the first thing on the card, which is 1 power. And that's the end of the round. So I pass my cards, and I take his cards. We replenish. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can't place anything there, and only 1 goes there. We put this square here, and we move to round 7. All right, so I don't have any resources. I need resources really badly. So what can I do for resources? The best I can do is 3. And the only things that'll let me do is move something from one place to another, which I don't really care about, or place something outside the edge of my asteroid, which I don't care about either. And right now I'm not super concerned with which resources I get, because I can take either purple or yellow and be happy right now. So I'm going to go late and see what he does first. And he's going 3 anyway, so good. It's a good waste of my 12. So he goes first, and he's trying to build the T. He doesn't have any organic, so he can't. He can build this, however, by spending 2 water and a power, which is a problem because now he's placed his 4th building type. And now I go next. I can take 3 of any one resource. I do want to build this, which takes 2 power, so I'm going to take 3 power. And we go to the second turn. All right, I think I'm going to be risky. I'm going to play this 9 card again. This is the one that lets me collect and build if I get lucky. There's a good chance because I have a 5 and a 2. And the only thing we've seen so far higher than a 9 is a 12. So it's very possible that he plays higher than a 9. So let's see what happens. He does. He plays an 11. So I get to go first, and I get to do both collect and build. So I'm going to collect 2 minerals. And then I'm going to spend 2 power and a mineral to place this right here in that spot. And now his turn, he's going to try and collect 3 minerals, which he can easily do. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's perfect. I pass my cards. I take his cards. We add resources, 2 minerals, 2 water, nothing there, 2 here. We replace buildings. And this will be our last round of the game. So I would like to build a little bit more if I can. I'm seeing 4 purple, I'm seeing 4 gray, and I'm seeing 4 blue. So right now I've got 3, 2, and 1. And I'd like to cover as much as I can. And I wouldn't mind using these shapes to do it. Ooh, if I can put another one of those right there, that would be wonderful. And I've already got this. So all I need is 1 power. And then I could build this S, which will get me 2 points, cover 3 more purple and 1 more gray. That would be wonderful. So let's try and do that. Let's go low number, low number, low number. Yeah. I'm going to go low number 3 to hopefully collect some resources. And he's got a 4, so I go first. And I'm going to take 3 of these powers. And he's going to try and build this with 2 water and a power, which he can do. Which is still not a new shape though, so that's fine with me. And then I'm going to play that too. And he plays a 14, so I easily go first. And I'm going to spend 2 power and a mineral to build this right here. And he's going to collect power. So again, I take his cards, these cards go away. But because that's the end of the 8th round, we move into scoring. All right, so to show the scoring, I'm going to move this out of the way, and I will bring the scoreboard in here. And I want to score the AI's player first so that I can see what I need to beat in order to win the game. So let's start with him, remembering he's going to score 7 points per building on his board. So he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 times 7 is 35. He's going to be red in this case. And then because he didn't build any T buildings, he's going to get -5. So the AI's score for the game is 30. So now we're going to score my board and see if I would manage to beat that score. So first we start by looking at the purple terrain type. And right now on my board, I only see one of them, which is amazing. I don't think I've ever done that well with the purple terrain before. So this is going to go 12 points. Then we look at gray. For gray, I have 1, 2, 3 remaining. So I score 4, which puts me to 16. For blue, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, which isn't great. It scores me 1 point. I'm going to score 15 points for every cluster of 5 different buildings. I only have 1 each of the long building, the square building, and the T building, so I only have 1 set of all 5, but that's fine. 15 and 17 is 32. And then finally, scoring based on this bonus card, I get 2 points per S shape and 1 point for each long. So 2, 4, 6 plus 1 is 7, puts me at 39 to 30. I've successfully beaten the AI. All right, while we're down here at the table, I want to just take a look at everything that we've seen so far in the video, take a look at the components and let you know what I think. All right, so let's take a look and see what we've got. First off, the main board is nice. It's made out of a normal sort of cardboard that you'd expect a board game board to be made out of. The art on it is very, very nicely designed. I like that there's this sort of washed out picture in the background that gives a nice atmosphere to the picture without overpowering the things that are important to be looking at. The round tracker is very clear. It's very clear where the shapes go. It's very clear what the price for each shape is. Everything is very brightly colored, very easily marked. Everything is marked with both a color and a shape. So we can see very clearly, even with colorblind problems, what everything is, which is very nice. Same thing with the buildings. The buildings are all different colors and they're all different shapes, which is great. Taking a look at the tiles themselves. The tiles themselves are pretty thick cardboard. Very, very sturdy. I don't have any problem with these going to be bending or breaking at any point in the future. They're double-sided again because you can flip and you can rotate when you place them. Yeah, I mean, they've got these sort of buildings printed on them. I mean, I guess they might be a little bit more interesting design. If you look closely, there's lots of stuff on them. They're not ugly by any means. It might be a little bit difficult sometimes to see exactly what everything's supposed to be on those tiles, but I think they look nice. And on your board, they build a nice, scene. You can see there's lots of, transport tubes and cars and buildings. It looks nice. The resources are great. I love that they give you these little plastic resources, right? I don't know how much you can see in this camera, but this power one has sort of got like a solar panel on top of it. The green one has a tree growing on top. The blue one is kind of a barrel or a bucket with water splashing out the top. And the purple one's really cool. I think that one's my favorite. I mean, not just because it's purple, but because the design is really cool. It's got sort of these rock crystals growing out of a little container. And not only that, I don't know if you could see well on the camera, but each of these pieces, in addition to being the same color of the resource, actually have the resource symbol printed directly on the piece as well. So it makes it really, really clear what everything is. The card quality, it's not linen finish. It's got a glossy finish to it, and they're a little bit stiffer than I'd like for a card. So they're not the easiest cards to shuffle, but they're not by any means bad cards. I don't have any issues with them. All of the information on the cards, both for the regular game and the AI game, very clear information. The descriptions of all of the actions are very, very clearly written. I don't have any issue with these cards. The bonus cards even more so. It's printed very large, what the pieces are that you need and what the scores are that you get for each of them. So those cards are really nice. The player boards, let me talk about these for a minute. These player boards are great. These player boards are made out of, I don't know if you can hear that. It's sort of a plasticky texture. This almost feels linen finish. I mean, it's not linen because it's plastic. If you've ever played Too Many Bones, this is sort of the same material that the cards in Too Many Bones are. They're really, really nice. They're almost definitely waterproof, so there's no reason you have to worry about these ever being destroyed. I like these a lot. They're really, really cool. The extra components, as I said, coming from the deluxe version of the game. The player pieces are these sort of little plastic tokens, and the round tracker is this cool sort of spaceship looking piece. If you do get the base game, you get these tokens instead for your player pieces, and the round tracker is just this black column, hexagonal column. But yeah, they do the job as well. There's no reason that you need those. The other thing that comes in the deluxe version of the game is an expansion called the Monumental Achievement Expansion. Unfortunately, this is not usable in the solo game because it does not come with any solo AI cards. It only comes with extra standard cards and advanced cards, as well as new, bigger monument buildings. So I can't try this as a solo game, so I haven't had a chance to check this out, so I'm not sure what it adds to the game. But know that if you get the deluxe direct edition from this company, it will come with this expansion as well. Last thing I do like to talk about is the insert for the game. It's nothing amazing, but the cards all fit very nicely in here. The score tracker covers the cards very well and sits flush with the board, so you don't have to worry about your cards going anywhere, which I always appreciate in an insert. These big containers, you can have one for all of your building tiles and one for all of the resources, plus the expansion I just showed you. It also comes with these tiles that have resources printed on them. I don't see any mention of these in the rules, so I'm not sure what they're used for. They may just be used for larger player counts. When you run out of some of the resource pieces, you can use these as additional resources. I'm not sure, but they do come here in the game, so I just wanted to point them out that they're there. So that's basically it for components. Meet me back up top and I'll let you know what I think about the game. Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the playthrough. Now, if you know me from any of my other videos, I usually come right out and say, I love this game, or this game really didn't work for me. Well, in this case, I can't really do that. This game is sort of a middle of the road game for me, but not really. I don't feel middle of the road about it. It's just going to be a little bit more complex for me to talk about this game, and I think that makes for a good review. So I'm going to take my time and let you know what I think about this review. This will be a predominantly solo review, but I did get a chance to play this game once as a two-player game. So I will make some comparisons here and let you know whether I think the solo game lives up to the multiplayer game, or whether the multiplayer game does things differently or better than the solo game. So let's first start with sort of what I enjoyed about this game. I think this game is really interesting. It's a very unique game, and the sort of combination of mechanisms works in a really cool way, right? On my turn, it's very simple. I'm going to play a card, and then I'm going to choose either to collect resources or build. And then each of the cards that I'm playing is going to sort of give me a special ability that affects the way that my turn plays out. But before we even get there first, we've got this simultaneous action selection idea, and I like this. I really like games that make me sort of think about what the other players are doing, force me to think about what the other players are doing, and play in a way that's going to work against or with what they're doing. Right? I have to sort of predict what my opponents are going to do to make the decision that what I'm going to do, and hope that they don't ruin my chances of doing what I want to do. And the use of initiative in this case, right, using a high or low number on the card that I'm playing, is a really cool way to do this. Because I have to constantly be thinking about, should I go early to make sure I can do exactly what it is that I want to be doing? Or is it okay for me to hang back a little bit this turn in the hopes that I can do something really cool when it's my turn? And the cards are designed really well that way, in that the low number cards aren't going to let you collect a lot of resources. They aren't going to have any cool game-breaking abilities, but they will make me go very early. Or on the other hand, the cards that are going to hold back a little bit, the cards that are these higher numbers, means later in the initiative, are going to let me to collect a ton of resources. Or they're going to give me some special power, for example, collecting and building on the same turn, or taking resources from my opponent, or collecting a really big number of resources, right? So I have to constantly be balancing in this in my head, and I really like that about the game. We'll come back to that again when I start talking a little bit about the negatives, because I do want to talk about some of the specifics of the solo game, but we'll hold off on that for a minute. The next thing that we've got is we've got this sort of card drafting. The game calls itself a drafting game. I'm not sure I agree with that. Because in my mind, a card drafting game is I'm presented with a bunch of cards, I take some, and the ones that I don't take, I pass to my opponent. And then they're going to get the cards that I didn't take. So I have to make sure that I'm taking cards that both help me, but also prevent my opponent from getting cards that they need. Now this is different than that. This game, I'm passing to my opponent the cards that I've already used. So I need to make sure that if I'm using something really cool, I don't mind the opponent getting that card. So I'm not really drafting the cards so much as I'm selecting the card that I want, and I don't mind passing, if that makes sense. It is still a draft in a way, but it works very differently than any other card drafting game. And it might be worth me holding onto a card and not using it so that it doesn't get passed, so that I can make use of it later in the game. For example, that collect and build card. If I hold on to that at the end, I might be able to sneak in one last building before the game ends. So you have to think about not the cards that you're taking, but the cards that you're using and then getting rid of, and whether it's better to use them now or later, and whether you care if your opponent has them. And then, of course, also, as I said, with the initiative, thinking about how the opponents are going to play against you with their initiative and how things are going to work out. So there's a lot of decision space in this game that I really, really enjoy. Now, the tile laying aspect. I'm a big fan of polyomino games. So this idea of trying to figure out how the puzzle pieces fit together nicely on the board to cover up the spaces that need to be covered, it works really well for me. I've never played the game, but I've heard a lot of Feast for Odin kind of vibes about building and covering specific things to get rid of the negative points in Feast for Odin, or in this case, build to those positive points. The idea of covering certain spaces to score points at the end of the game is a very interesting concept to me, and I think that works really well in this game. So I'm a fan of collecting these resources to build buildings, but each of the buildings has a different shape. And not only that, but each of the player mats has a slightly different layout of where those different terrain types are, and even just the shape of the outside of the board. So as long as I'm shuffling up those player boards every time, whether I'm playing multiplayer or solo, I'm going to get a slightly different map or a slightly different board that I need to cover. So I can't use the exact same strategy every single time, especially because my opponents might be buying the buildings I need before I get them, or by taking the resources I need before I get them. So I can't always plan ahead for exactly what it is that I want to do. I need to have one or two different strategies on top of my main strategy that I can resort to in the case that I get blocked from doing what I need to do. So this combination of simultaneous action selection, this sort of reverse draft, and then this polyomino tile laying, covering spaces to score points idea is really cool. There's also the scoring two things. There's the scoring that I get extra goal points for specific shapes that are only for me, that other players don't get. And the points for the 15 points for one of each shape. Those things work really well together, and if either one of them was there on its own, I don't know that it would work right? If I have to get one of every piece for a grouping to get 15 points, 15 points in this game is huge. 15 points is probably going to be almost half of your score sometimes, depending on what other things you're scoring. And that might be game breaking, except that if we have those goal cards where I'm scoring 2 points per shape that I need, or 1 point per my secondary shape that I need, I would be very focused on only building that shape every single time. And it's not going to always help me because I have to make sure I'm covering the right things to score points. But if I'm focused on those things, two things. In the multiplayer game, somebody's going to quickly realize which shapes I'm building, and it's going to be a fight over, will I let him get his shape, and will they let me get my shape? And that's going to sort of direct the game into only one direction. But now, if I'm getting 15 points for a set of all of the different shapes, I must make sure that I have at least one of each shape, while also focusing on getting those specific buildings that I need. And in that process, if I'm focusing on those other shapes that I don't really want, but I need to have for that set of all shapes, it also gives me the ability to sort of trick my opponent and to confuse them about which shape I'm focusing on to get those extra points. And by doing so, I may be able to then sneak in some of those shapes that I need without them realizing it, so that I can then score those extra bonus points. So that combination of the two, of scoring for a full set of all shapes, plus getting extra bonus for a specific shape, works really well together. So let's talk about what I don't necessarily like about the game. And again, I'm going to focus on the solo game specifically to begin with, because there are a lot of nitpicky things and nothing that I don't really like about the game. Nothing is super negative that would prevent me from getting the game or from playing the game. But there are some things that make me kind of hesitant about the solo mode. So let's go through them one by one. The simultaneous action selection, I think that works really well both in the multiplayer game and the solo game. Because, two things. I still need to think about whether or not I'm going before the AI opponent, and even more so in this case, because in the multiplayer game I can sort of predict the kinds of things that my opponent is going to do. But because the solo AI has a random card draw, I don't really know what it's going to do. So I need to think about preventing it from doing anything at the same time that I'm getting, what I need to get done. But that also means that they could randomly be taking a shape that a multiplayer person normally wouldn't be taking from me. But I have no clue if they're going to steal a building from me before I get that building put out. So I need to pay attention to that. But that same randomness is a little bit less interesting because I can't really predict what they're going to do. So while in a multiplayer game I might be able to predict that my opponent really wants to go early this turn so they can get blah blah blah, and I can play off of that, in the solo game I can't really do that because I don't have any way to know what's coming, except I can see the cards that have already come out. So sort of midway I have half information, and later I have all information if I really need it. But that's only for a small percentage of the gameplay time. So there's a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of, there's a decent amount of randomness in the card pulls of the solo AI that makes it a little bit trickier to predict what's coming, and I think that takes a little bit out of the game. Now it does make the game change a little bit, right? Because now also, after we play our card and flip over our card, I can see exactly what the solo AI wants to do. So if I'm going first because of a lower initiative, I can specifically make sure I'm blocking what they're doing, or I can specifically make sure that I don't let them have the resources that they need to have to do something further in the future. So that does add something extra positive to this as well. So this negative is not a huge negative. It's just a little bit of an irkiness that things are a bit random, and that randomness could swing things a little bit. It does present new challenges, but it also sort of takes away from some of the regular challenges that the game presents normally. Moving on to the card drafting, this is my biggest problem with the solo game. One of the really cool things about the multiplayer game is that there's this puzzle about which cards do I use, which cards do I allow to be passed to my opponent, and now that I've passed them to my opponent, I know they have certain cards, so I can play off of those cards. Like in the multiplayer game, there's a card that lets me copy the ability of the other player. That card doesn't exist in the solo game, but that card is cool because I'm paying attention to what I'm passing. I know what's out there, I know what the possibilities are for the people that come after me in the multiplayer game. And likewise, I know that they know what I'm holding, so I need to keep that in my head at all times as well. In the solo game, this doesn't exist. And that's because when I pass my two cards to the AI, my two cards are going to a discard pile. And that discard pile doesn't get shuffled back into the deck until after all of the cards have been played. Now there are 14 cards and there's 8 rounds in the game. That means only 16 cards are being played, and we've got 14. So that means in the entire game, I will only ever see 2 of those cards twice. And if that's a really good card, then that's super helpful for me. And if that's not a very helpful card, then that's sort of a waste for me. And that's a shame, because I don't get to think about, okay, I can count on some of these cards coming back to me, because it's going to be random what cards come back to me, because we're going to shuffle after they're all in discard. I can't pay attention to which cards I'm sending to the AI. Like if I don't want the AI to get any mineral resources, I can hold on to those mineral cards, but it's not going to matter because they're not going to get that card back anyway until the very last round of the game, because it's just going to sit in that discard pile. So while it gives me information about what they have already had or what they're not going to have, it doesn't allow me any kind of control about controlling which cards they get, because they won't get those cards until the last round of the game. Whereas in the multiplayer game, they're getting them instantly as I pass them on. So that's a shame. While we're talking about the cards, the other thing about this that bothers me with the solo game is I'm worried that the replayability is going to be very hurt in the solo game. And this is mostly because of these cards, right? With these cards, in the multiplayer game, we've got 20 standard cards. If you're playing with 5 players, which probably is going to be rare, you're going to use all 20 cards. But in the case that you're not, a 2-player game and a 3-player game are using 12 of those 20 cards. A 4-player game is using 16 of those 20 cards. That means every time I play, I'm getting a different set of cards, and that mix of cards is going to change the way the game plays every time. And then on top of that, there's an entire different mode with the advanced mode of the game. And the advanced mode of the game offers me this extra ability that if I play this card on my first turn of the round, it does one thing, but if I play it on the second turn of the round, it does another thing. That doesn't happen in the solo game because I'm not allowed to use those cards in the solo game because I have to use the special AI cards. And there is no AI deck that includes that advanced piece of the game, which also means I can't use the advanced side of the board where I score based on the things that I'm not supposed to cover. And I think that's an even cooler aspect of the game because when I'm playing and when I'm laying those polyomino tiles down, I'm already paying attention to trying covering as much of those as possible. And if I could be rewarded for only covering those and not covering the empty spaces, I think that would add even more to the game, but that's not usable in the solo game, unfortunately. And then there's that expansion with the monument buildings and the extra set of cards. But those set of cards are also not in the AI or the solo version of the game because those are designed only for the standard and advanced cards for the multiplayer game. They both get new cards. They both get more variety and replayability out of that. There's these cool new uniquely shaped buildings that have more than 4 squares in them. And all of this is great. It pushes the game to play differently every time, to continue to play because you want to see the new challenges that come out. And with the solo game, I'm going to see all 14 cards every game. They're going to be the same 14 cards every game. So the only thing that's going to change is the order that they come out and the slight difference in the player board that I'm playing with. The AI is going to score exactly the same way each time, except I get to choose on a sliding scale how many points they score, how difficult it becomes for them. But at the same time, it's the same game every time. So I'm a little bit worried that the solo game is going to get stale. If they do come out with some new expansions or some new cards to add to the solo mode, that would be great. If they did come out with a way to add the advanced mode in the solo game or to use those monument buildings in the solo game, that would be wonderful. Because I do really enjoy this game solo. It's just I'm worried that there's a little bit too much randomness in the AI, but even that's fine because I can deal with the randomness. It makes it a tactical decision and I enjoy tactical decisions, so I don't mind that. But I'm just worried that after 5, 6, 7 games of this, it's going to feel the same every time, very quick, and I'm afraid of that. Now, I did play it once multiplayer, and I did really, really enjoy that. One more small negative thing that I will mention is that, and this is going to be different for everybody who plays the game, but I didn't feel that some of the abilities on the cards were very helpful to me, and that may just be because of the way I was strategizing and the decisions that I was making. But for example, there's a card that lets me move a tile from one place on my board to another place on my board following the same rules. But I was playing in such a way that I was designing the path of tiles that I wanted to place. And I guess if you were forced to play a building because all of the other buildings had been bought in a sort of higher count game, maybe in a 3-player game or a 5-player game, when you've got more people competing for the limited resources that there are, that might be more helpful. But that wasn't a very strong ability for me. And another one that I didn't ever use is the ability to place a tile so that it extends over the edge of the board. In my brain, I wouldn't ever want to do that. Even if I had the ability to place extending outside the edge of my board, then I'm wasting those pieces and not covering anything on my board. So in the advanced game, that might be more helpful. But especially in the solo game, I didn't really feel that I would ever want to use that because it would just deny me the ability to cover things and score more points. And on top of that, every shape is exactly 4 squares, so it didn't really matter to me. There's no way for me to get a big piece that's still going to cover those 4 squares and extend over the edge or something like that. So there are a couple abilities that I feel might be a little bit, not useless, but very rarely used, and that may be designed that way. I haven't played this game enough to see, and I haven't played this game with enough people to see other people's decision spaces. I can only see the way that I'm thinking. So there may be complete avenues of thought and different kinds of strategy that I haven't even thought of. So at the end, I've been rambling for quite a while. I hope this was helpful. I will say I do really enjoy, as I said, the simultaneous action selection, the sort of reverse drafting, the polyomino tile laying. I think the mechanisms are really cool. I think they work really well together. I think in a multiplayer game with the advanced set of cards, which I haven't had a chance to try yet, maybe with that monumental expansion thrown in, this is a very, very satisfying game, and I would definitely recommend the game. As a solo game, I'm not sure. I can't tell you to go out and buy this right now. I would tell you that if you have this as a multiplayer game, definitely give the solo game a try, because it does work. It is fun, and I will keep pulling it out every once in a while to play solo. But again, I do have worries that it will get stale fairly quickly in the solo mode, unless there's some more cards or some more variants thrown in to make the solo mode more variable and different every time I play. So I hope that was helpful, and I hope you enjoyed the video. So don't forget to like and subscribe below, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.